I'm I Will Dominate, and this is Thorin's channel. The guy who, if I keep on associating with him, will get me banned on Twitch eventually.
Don't forget, you can get 10% off a delicious order of sugar-free Gamersubs with the code Thorin, Thorin, at gamersubs.gg. Now, there are rumours that the LEC will change the format of the splits. The LCS in the past, there have been repeated comments about potentially removing the spring split. Obviously, they added the lock-in tournament, although, quite frankly, that didn't work as hoped, and most of the teams don't have the rosters ready, and it doesn't become the cool tournament it otherwise would be on the calendar. This brings up a serious flaw with the format of the splits and modern fan thinking. Like, I can see why the splits work, remember. Riot are the people who just love the NFL and really do think esports and sports are one for one. Their whole dream is to be the NFL, as opposed to my dream in esports was, let's do something unique to us because we're not the NFL and sports, so we don't have to just copy them for no good reason. We can take the best of sports and we can do what we want otherwise and not be inhibited by decades-old things or TV broadcast concerns that don't affect us, or things that were invented hundreds of years ago, or ideas based around like whether people could travel by planes back then or whatever. So I think when you look at it, they've obviously just copied an NFL season, haven't they? Well, the problem is, kind of like an NFL season, nobody ever remembers what happens during the season. They just look at the playoffs. They remember when you lost, and then they just go, that was how good that team was. No, that was how good that team was on that week. That was how good that team was under one moment of pressure and played the second week in a different scenario, like it was like European soccer, football, we call it in Europe. Then you have the two legs in the Champions League, don't you? You have a chance to come back. Like, spoiler, Liverpool never would have won that Champions League a few seasons back if there wasn't a second leg against Barcelona, would they? Although then again, they obviously wouldn't be doing home and away at the games. They'd be at some neutral ground. So whatever. It is whatever on that one. So obviously this brings up the whole thing where, especially American fans, love to use that line. You're only as good as your last game. No, what that says to me is that's a counter signal. You think, oh, I'm being really discerning here, drive like an elite set of tastes, and you're only as good as your last game, sir. You have to perform at a high level to please me, the random fan. No, what that says to me is a counter signal. It's like, I'm a peon pleb who just doesn't understand more than a single factor analysis approach, and also I can't call to my mind a lot of different games, so I'm just going to make all my judgment about someone on a BO1. Oh, anti-clever. To say, no, you're not, you're a moron. No one cares what you think. So when people think that way, spoiler, that would ruin a lot of legendary sports players' careers if they're already as good as their last game they played. By the way, what about people who got horrifically injured? Yeah, not really a great standard, is it? It's almost like that's what a moron would say. So in the history of esports tournaments, at least there's a logic, or there's a reason why that might be what people think, because most esports tournaments in history, remember, it hasn't been around that many decades, were what you call weekend clans. They might be 2 or 3 days, usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so people could be off work, and those are the only days you play. So even if it's a Counter-Strike World Championship, you would come along, it would be a few days long. Sign up on the Thursday night, you play on Friday, Saturday. If you're still in the finals on Sunday, great. Might not even only be the finals on Sunday, might be the lower bracket final, might even be the upper bracket and lower bracket final on Sunday. You never know back then. So even World Championship type events, and in League of Legends, it was the Season 2 events, they only became a week long for Worlds or months long, many, many years into esports. Like, other than that, it was always just this LAN approach. So back then, yeah, your form over a weekend at the end, well, there is no end. That just was the whole tournament in a weekend. So yeah, that is who you were to some degree. Still at your last game, but those last few days did summarize who you are. But even then, not quite, because it's only a weekend of your career. And even then, you had the whole issue back then. There might only be 4 or 6 of those tournaments in a year. So all of a sudden, if you have 2 that are bad in terms of this time play, you might actually be the best team in the world for the rest of the year. And then on those 2 weekends, it just didn't go your way. No, not like some magical thing. People always put this like logic behind results. Even people like Michael Jordan couldn't really control that they were just the absolute best in that weekend. They had to also sometimes get saved by a teammate or have like the other team underperform. Like, everyone has to have luck elements involved. I always say this line because if you get it, it sinks in immediately. If you're an idiot, you'll still think, what does that mean? Which is, when someone says there's a 10% chance of something happening, in your brain you think, well, it's just not going to happen, is it? No, it still happens 1 out of 10 times. As in, if you did that thing 10 times on average, it would happen. It'd happen. So what if you did it 10 times? But actually, it turns out of the sample size of 10, it happened the first time. And because we only tried it once in reality, that was just the only time it was ever tested and it happened. So then you go, well, it wasn't just 1 in 10. You're like, it happened. Like, you were all wrong, people who said it wouldn't. No, They actually were right. That's the weird thing. And so this is what people will always miss and they will always forget when it comes to this kind of a topic. So to me, I mean, Worlds, by the way, was an even bigger issue in League of Legends. You could be fantastic the whole year, and then if you were bad for this one weekend at Worlds in your particular playoff match, then you sucked the whole time. You were a fraud. You were never... I mean, that's all nonsense, is it? People's prediction might be wrong. Even then, though, what are the reasons? Like, was it a massive upset? Why would it be a massive upset if you're actually better? Exactly. These are the points you have to think about. And it's not as simple. I get why fans want it to be as simple. They want to just have whiplash and crazy comments. But if we're actually analysing history and we're trying to understand what happened, you have to look at the entire play throughout the year. Now, obviously, the splits, particularly LCS, have nearly always been 8 to 10 weeks. Then there would be like a week for the playoffs in the past. That's right. They would play the playoffs over barely any days. Then they became a few weeks. Then they became eventually like loads of weeks now, especially for the LCS with the double elim format. Now, as a result, the worst thing about splits is only the final result is remembered. People just don't remember the rest. Even if they watch the split, somehow it just... They get the amnesia, it just disappears. People act like it never happened, and only that final result matters, which is even more mad in League of Legends, where someone could do a crazy draft. You could yourself just do a slight brain fart in the draft. One player gets like a double buff or some type scenario, or steals a Baron, and the whole season and whole year you were trash because this one thing happened. It's a childish, reductive way of thinking. So I'll give you a bunch of splits, and I'll tell you some things about those splits you very likely don't remember, don't know, and even if you watch them, you'll be like, oh shit, he's right. So how about this? The first ever split of the LCS. What's the storyline, right? Everyone's going to go, well, there was no Cloud9. So TSM won, and TSM brought in Wild Turtle and had the drama with Chaos. Right? You've missed a massive part of the split there, which is when the split began. TSM was actually very average most of the split, and they were actually struggling at one point in time, which is why, justifiably, they kicked Chaos, and they sort of snuck in the back door and were able to go with Wild Turtle and just win the tournament. And even then, in very close fashion against a bunch of, at the time, relative nobodies in the final in GG University. What people will forget about that split is that actually began with Curse and then Curse and Dignitas dominating the league. They were winning all their games. Now, there became big drama with Curse, and then Dig fell off because of some things with their champions getting up. Yeah, that's all the case. But you go back and look at those splits. That was the storyline of the majority of the split. Meanwhile, the CLGs of the world were floundering. TSM was having these issues with Chaos. People don't remember that, and so now they just act like TSM just dominated. They didn't dominate shit. They just did well in the playoffs and managed to win some big games. Then how about next year round, Season 4 summer? I've already pointed out in the video about Monty. This is when CLG, Dignitas, LMQ were all elite teams, the whole split through, and had moments where they were the best team or looking like the best team and looking like really strong rosters in the LCS. Notice I didn't say Cloud9. Cloud9 got together towards the end of the split. TSM had the whole thing with Glebe and Loco, and they were not beating any of the top teams, but they managed to make it through the playoffs and do well. Curse was just hanging around, was okay, but they were even themselves in a position where they didn't look like they were going to be a top team. They didn't think they'd go to semis or have a chance to go to Worlds. Then you go to the next year, Season 5 spring. Well, because it's not summer when CLG won, and it's not the year before in spring when Monty took them to semis, everyone's going to be like, who cares about CLG? They were not. CLG, along with TSM, were the best team at this point in the split. Most of the split, go back and look, these were the two teams battling, and obviously this is before they just swapped out Scara for Coach Chris, and then Link for Paul Belton. So not even massive upgrades or massive changes. This team already was very, very good. It's just they still had some weird things going on psychologically, and they would just throw when it got to the playoffs. Then how about the summer of that same year, Season 5 summer? That was when the best regular season team... No, you're wrong. It wasn't CLG who won the split. No, it wasn't TSM who went to the final. It wasn't Tip who had the MVP rush. Wasn't Cloud9. No, they'd made the incarnation. No, it was Team Liquid. Everyone's going to meme now because it didn't make Worlds, it didn't make the finals, it didn't win. Team Liquid was the best squad. They looked like they had the best roster of players, they had the best record, and they looked like the strongest team, and just some team fighting and laning. They looked like they were just going to win just off that alone. They absolutely were really good this split, but it's just forgotten to history because they're not a big team that was associated with winning at the time, and they didn't make it to the finals, they didn't win the split, and they didn't make it a World. So people just delete their whole accomplishment, and suddenly that never happened. Suddenly that was never the case. Piglet wasn't a monster at that point in time, apparently. Then you go to Season 6, the craziest one I've ever seen. Because everyone laughs at the whole Lucian top meme, and obviously Immortals didn't make it to Worlds, everyone loves to dunk on him. Like, lol, they were just fucking... Hootie was trash in NA. Like, mate, Hootie was the best top laner this year. This was the year, if you don't remember, when Immortals was incredible in both splits. That's the other thing. People remember they were really good in spring, but they just failed in the playoffs. No, in summer, they also were unreal. Like, everyone remembers TSM dominated. Mate, Immortals was right there with them. Those were the two teams dominating. After them, the drop-off was crazy. So the fact that CLG went to Worlds, the fact that CLG were, Cloud9 went to... These were crazy things to happen, mate. Other than that, like, at this point in time, these were the mega teams. Yeah, obviously, CLG won the spring split in crazy fashion, mate. They could have gone out 5th to 6th or in the semi-finals against Liquid or whatever it was. Then obviously, I mean, there's no world where they should have been doing anything in the playoffs in summer, and obviously they got the Worlds and they were fucking busted and bums by them. Then you look, Season 8, this one's criminal, because since this is when Team Liquid began its 4 splits in a row, and they won both splits, and obviously Spring was all about like double lifting and tragedy in his life. People forget that the best team in Season 8 Spring was Echo Fox. The one that had Hooney, who was still really good, and Dardoch, who'd been properly unleashed and now had a squad where he could like trust his top laner and just play off him. And ganking top in the LCS has always been the way to play. And then he had strong players in the other roles. This was a fucking banger team. If they hadn't had to play Team Liquid so early in the bracket, I think people remember this team very differently. If they'd been on the other side of the bracket, they'd be in the finals. There's no way 100 Thieves would. So I think they just saw, it's so lucky for them, Team Liquid did fuck around and then just get it together in the playoffs and have a player like Doublelift who just always made the miracle run at certain points in his career once he'd been fully activated, as it were. Then how about in Season 9? Everyone's going to forget this. My beloved Froggen. Got Golden Guardians, go back and look at that lineup of players. It's fucking trash. It's like Froggen's really good. Haunts is like good, above average, sometimes pretty good. The rest of them are a fucking joke for their positions. And this team was like tied for 4th place in the split. How's that possible, guys? There's way better rosters out there. There's people spending way more money. How could they ever be there? Well, no one remembers because they just didn't win in like the 5th to 6th playoff game or whatever and lost in the 5th game to FlyQuest, right? So who gave this shit? Well, I do. People who care about esports history do. That doesn't make the star players shit because of the result in the playoffs. Then how about this year? We'll go with the split from this year. How about the last split in the LCS? What happened then? Everyone's going to go, right, Cloud9 like came out strong and won. And then obviously like 100 Thieves was always good. And then like, let me think, who else? Well, I guess like EG got it together and won all those low bracket matches. Oh, TL failed, haha. What they'll forget is like the two best teams in the split easily was Evil Geniuses far and away number 1. It looked like they were easily going to be the team. If they didn't win, it looked like finals at a minimum. And then you also obviously had Team Liquid, the Super Squad team. Look, they were still right there. They were still in the mix. People like Cloud9 didn't get their shit together in the regular split. People like 100 Thieves like got it together maybe towards the latter half of the split when they figured out the draft. People will never remember this. They'll just look at the playoffs and assume that's how it all went. Well, in this scenario, what is the point of having the regular split? By the way, spoiler, it isn't only to qualify for playoffs. That's people, again, missing the notion there is more than one metric to judge greatness by, to judge what matters, and that you should care about. You shouldn't only care about winning worlds. In that kind of scenario, that logic goes, unless you can win worlds, it doesn't even matter if you qualify or not. No, it does matter if you qualify and go to the finals and come second. That's actually an incredibly important accomplishment, even though there's one accomplishment better, going to the finals and winning. But that's the point. You have to use multi-factor analysis. Your career is how you played for. Are you ready? Oh, this is a banger. Are you ready? Your career, your whole career is judged on how you played for. No, not just the playoffs. It's your whole career. That's obviously what you judge your whole career off, isn't it? It's not just the playoffs of your split. It's not just the finals of your split. It's not just worlds. It's not just getting to the worlds finals. It's your whole career. All of these games count. I always tell that to people when they have excuses. These all count, mate. All these games count. It's not that only this one counts or this one doesn't. No, they all count. That's what we're judging your entire career. That's why you can be Barry Sanders and play on a whack team and be maybe the greatest ever of all time at your position. You can be someone who, I mean, even, I'm not a huge fan of this as a player, but Brandon Marshall was actually a pretty good wide receiver. Never made the playoffs ever in his whole career. Did he suck? I mean, it's not like he controlled the whole team. It was the GM and the quarterback. Come on, man. That's not how it works. I mean, think in sports, there's been some amazing regular season teams who just didn't do much in the playoffs or didn't do what they were supposed to do. 2007 Mavs, there's a reason Dirk Nowitzki won the MVP. They were fucking dominating the league. Yeah, they got upset by the one maybe weird matchup who wasn't even supposed to be in the playoffs and won like 8 out of the last 9 games or something, who just caught heat and managed to play stylistically well against them in the fucking old school Warriors. Then you have the 2013 Broncos where they set the touchdown record. All that shit. They lost in the finals in part because of injuries and then also because of some crazy shit that happened in the game that would never normally happen. And then the other team also went ham and wasn't injured that season. That's right, Brady fans. The next season, their defense was fucking wrecked, wasn't it? Then how about I'll give you a modern day one, 2018 Saints, the one that was 10-1 and then finished 13-3 and would have been in the finals and would have had an amazing chance to win a Super Bowl over the Patriots, who wasn't actually doing that well in terms of scoring, except they had one of the craziest bullshit no-call defensive player interference scenarios I've ever seen right at the end of the game that almost certainly would put them in position to just straight up win the game. So in these scenarios, we're just supposed to forget everything that happened and retcon it. Right, they didn't win any, but no, only morons think that. And I actually hope that when people say that is a counter signal that that person is a moron. Because best of one thinking, the flaw with it goes like this. Because it's the only match you've seen, it becomes your entire possible set of what could have happened. And what happened always had to. That's just never going to work as a way to think about the game. It will always be flawed. And I hope people can actually understand these splits did mean something. The fact that you don't remember is your fault. Doesn't mean that the split no longer mattered, that those games weren't worth playing and seeing how good these people were. And those games all count for how good people were in their careers. So miss me with that whole thing of like, he's just chilling, but he turns it on in the playoffs. Then he's not as good as the player who's really good in the regular split and really good in the playoffs. Is he? He's not maybe even as good as someone who's just amazing in the regular split, but had one bad playoff series. He might actually be worse than that guy because he didn't give us a good enough sample size. And I'm very suspicious as to why that would be. This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Hades GOUD, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Adam Ochs, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Jensen Goh, Kovacevicd, Pacy, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Thooorin, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my main man, Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Would you like to ask a question in one of those monthly AMAs where sometimes I roast people? Do you want teasers to find out who the guests are for upcoming shows and interviews I'm doing? Maybe you want to be part of one of those cool, lengthy esports discussions that I have. Well, if any of those perks sound tantalizing to you, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skrilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box below.